Welcome. Previous session we have gone through the process scheduling, in which we have learned about various schedulers like the long-term scheduler, the short-term scheduler, the medium-term scheduler. After that, we have gone through the concept of context switching also. Now let us move to the next concept, that is operations on the processes. Apart from that, we are also going to learn about the inter-process communication, and if time permits, we are going to learn about some inter-process communications with respect to various operating systems, like how this IPC is going to be executed in Windows environment, Unix environment, etc. Now let us try to understand about the operations on processes. That means what are the various operations which are being done with regard to the process management. See friends, the basic activity or the basic operation or the basic operations which are needed for the process management are: one, the process creation, and second one is the process termination. See, these are the two basic operations with respect to be executed with respect to the process management. See, a process may create several new processes, as we have seen in our previous session, that a long-term scheduler creates a job, creates a process and pulls into the job queue, right? So while the process is being executing, right, so parallel to that process may create another child process. In Unix we call it as the fork, Fork. Fork is the system call in Unix where it creates the child process. See, this is the option where we have to see. So process creation means when a new process will be created. That means whenever a process wants to create a child process, then at that particular instance a new process can be created. So in Unix, a system call called fork, fork system call creates a child process. That means, so creating a child process is one of the way of creating a process. So the process which is creating the child process is called the parent process, and of course the newly created process is called the child process. And each of these two processes, what are those two processes? Yeah, one is the parent process, second one is the child process. Each of these two processes may in turn create again child processes, and the new child process which have been created again can be created, they can create another sub processes or the child processes. So this can be this mechanism or this phenomena can be
a tree data structure which contains a list of processes in the form of a tree. See, most operating systems, including Unix and Windows operating systems, identify every process through a special identifier called PID. So for every process which has been created in the operating system will be assigned with a specialized number or will be assigned with a specialized integer called the process identifier. Normally we used to call it as the PID. Friends, you can see the same in the illustration, which is an illustration of a typical process tree for operating system, especially the Solaris operating system. So this picture is showing the name of each process and its corresponding process identifier. See friends, in Solaris, the process at the top of the tree is the schedule process. So in Solaris, the root job or root process or the grandparent process or the process at the top of the tree is the schedule process. with what is the process ID number or PID number. Since it is the root job or it is the root process, automatically its process identifier has the value of 0. Now the schedule process creates several children processes. Correct or not? Yeah. See, this schedule process have several children. Let us see those children. The first children process is the page out process, and the second children process is the file stream flush process. So these are the two sub processes for the schedule process. So normally in such a way we can understand how the process or the sub processes or the chain of processes can be created and can be executed in any kind of operating system. In this example we are seeing the Solaris operating system. Assume that the top of the process is the schedule process and assume that it has two child process. One is the page out process and second one is the file stream flush process. Now you can see the picture. These processes are responsible for managing memory and file systems. So page out is the process which is intended for memory access. At the same time, for accessing the file streams etc., the FS flush process is intended. The schedule process also has created another process that is called the initialization, or in the diagram what we have mentioned, that is INIT process. So the schedule process or the root process also has created another process, that is the INIT process. So what exactly this child process is doing? This child process is serving the root process for its subordinate jobs, right? So in the figure we can see two children process for the initialization process. What are they? The first one is the INETD, that means which is a networking services process, and second one is the DT login. What is that means? DT login means this process is intended for the user login. So you can understand how the processes are going to be executed within an operating system environment. So now the list of all these processes are being visualized in the form of a tree. Correct or not? See, schedule is residing on the top. It has three children: the init, the FS flush, and next one is the page out. Of course, again init is having two children process. One is intended for the networking, second one is intended for the login. So if you try to expand these process again and again, finally you are going to visualize the entire system of processes in the form of a tree structure. Correct or not? If you look at the picture, then you can identify or you can understand the whole intention of this diagram. As we have mentioned, the schedule is the parent process and its process identifier is 0. It has three children. The first children is the initialization with the process identifier as 1. It has second children, that is the page out with the process identifier as 2. And it has the third children, that is the file system flush, which is intended for the file streaming, right? Again, if you see, the initialization process has two sub-children. One is the INETD, that means the initialization for the networking. At the same time, there is another login during initialization, which is a sub-process for the initialization. You can see the process identifiers. The process identifier for the initialization with respect to the networking is 140. So at the same time, for the login, the process identifier is 251. So it is not like that the process identifier number should be in a sequence manner. Rather, the operating system is assigning some random numbers according to the available process numbers in the job pool. Now if you again go back to the diagram,
the initialization with respect to the terminal networking. Again, it is having another background job. In operating system, background job is also called as the daemon job, DAEMON. So it is something like the Telenet daemon job is a subchild of the INETD process. If you see the process identifier, it is 7776. Parallelly, again the login process is having a child process, and what is the name of that process? It is called the X session. Normally this X session means it is something like a session for login. It's a child process, and what is its process identifier? It is 294. If you move further, you have another child process for the daemon job, that is CSH, that means C shell. There is a batch process for the daemon job, and its process identifier is 7778. So parallelly you can see another shell job or shell process with a process identifier as 340 for the X session. If you move further, for the C shell you have two sub processes. One is for Netscape and another is for the Emacs. Parallelly, for the C shell of the shell job, again it is having two sub children. One is for listing all the files and directories, that is ls command. Again it is also having another sub process, that is the cat. Cat means catalog. So it is a typical data structure normally we see in the Unix operating system. So every process is having a process identifier, and the list of processes are all being assigned as a tree data structure. Normally in interviews you may get a question. If you have a process or set of processes, how can you view all these processes? The simple answer is, if you have n number of processes in a Windows or any other operating system, you can visualize these processes using the tree data structure. And you should also remember that every process will have an integer number, that is called the process identifier, or normally we call it as the PID. Creating a process is not enough, correct or not? See, for executing a process, we need to have some CPU time slot, some memory registers, or memory some space, or other kind of input output devices for fetching out the data, correct or not? So in general, a process is needed for certain resources. What are those? The CPU or the CPU utilization time, and the memory, the files, the IO devices, etc. So to accomplish any task along with the process, we need to have certain resources, correct or not? So how these resources are being assigned or allocated? If you have a parent-child process concept, let us try to understand this situation. So when a process creates a sub-process, the process or the parent process may allocate the resources to the child process. Option 1. At the same time, the child process can be waiting for the resources from other process, right? So that means, let us try to understand the same statement again. So whenever a process has been created by a parent process, now the child process may be able to obtain the resources directly from the operating system, or it may be constrained to a subset of resources of the parent process. So you have to remember that. So whenever a child process has been created, of course, now the operating system can allocate the resources to the child process. Option 1. No, if the child process is not been is restricted, then a subset of resources from the parent process may be allocated to the child process or the newly created process. The parent may have to partition its resources among its children. When you have more than one children,
which are executing parallelly along with the parent process, then who is responsible for allocating the resources? Right, the parent process is responsible for allocating the resources. How it is doing? As we can see, a normal typical parents which try to feed the children by partitioning the food. Something like here in this scenario, the parent process tries to make a partition of all the resources, and the partial resources can be allocated to the child process. So this is a kind of situation where you have more than one children. Let us try to understand a little bit in detail here. See, when a process creates a new process, we have two possibilities. When a process creates a new process, we have two possibilities. Possibility 1, the parent continues to execute concurrently along with the children. That means the parent is also being executed along with the child process. So option 2, what is the second chance? The second chance is that the parent waits until some or all its children have been terminated. So that means if a parent has created, for example, 5 children processes, the parent may wait until all the 5 children processes have been terminated or finished. Otherwise, that depends on the situation, that depends on the requirement. Otherwise, for example, if 2 children processes have been finished, then the parent may be executed after the 2 child processes have been finished. That depends upon the situation. Anyway, in the option 1, the parent and the children can be parallelly executed. In the option 2, the parent may be executed only after the completion of the children processes. And let us try to see there are other 2 possibilities with respect to the address space. Because so whenever a process has been created, automatically the information about this process will be copied or stored in the memory. Correct or not? So whenever a process has been created, that information will be created in the memory or the main memory. So that information is called the address space. Now with respect to the address space, let us try to understand how it can be done. So there are 2 possibilities for the address space. Let us see what are those. The child process is a duplicate of the parent process. What does it mean? That means that both the parent and the child process are sharing the same program section as well as the data section of the parent. So that means here the address space means the details of the parent process or the memory limits of the parent process or the data section of the parent process along with the source code of the parent process. Now, if parent and child has been executing parallelly, then option 1, what is the option 1? The child process is a duplicate of the parent process. What does it mean? That means that both the parent process, the child process is trying to copy or trying to work on the same program and data as the parent. This is option 1. Next, option 2. What is the option 2? The child process has a new program loaded into it. Right. So these are the 2 ways when we speak with respect to the address space. So in terms of address space, the child process can be executing with the same copy of the address space of the parent. If you go to the option 2, the child process may be having a different kind of address space. Friends, let us try to understand the concept of process termination. A process terminates when it finishes its execution. That means when a process is going to execute its final statement, assume that that process is going to be finished successfully or terminated successfully. Right. And once a process has been executed or finished successfully,
then all the resources available to that process can be deallocated and they can be given back to the operating system or to the parent process. Correct or not? So when a process finishes its execution, any resource or all the resources which are assigned to that process can be detached or should be detached, and they have been reallocated or assigned to the operating system, or they can be given back to the parent process which has been created this sub process. This termination can also occur in other situations. We should understand when this termination has been happened. See, a process can cause the termination of another process through the system call called the terminate process. Normally it happens in Windows environment. So it is a situation that we have different kinds of processes, and the situation is something like, the environment is something like, whenever a high priority process is entered into the system, assume like that. That means whenever a very important task has entered into the system, automatically that task or that process will forcefully try to terminate the current executing process. So in this scenario also, the process can be terminated. Correct or not? Normally in the Windows environment, there is a system call called the terminate process. We should also note that a parent needs to know the identifiers of its children. That means the parent process should also maintain a catalog that what are the resources which are being assigned to the child process and what are the other things which are being assigned or allocated to the child process. So that when one process creates a new process, the identity of the newly created process is passed to the parent. So whenever a child process is being created, its corresponding the identification details, something like the process identifier, the list of open files, the resources, everything has been maintained by the parent process. Now we have again two possibilities. Let us try to see. A parent may terminate the child process in different situations. A parent may terminate the child process in different situations. Let us try to see what are those situations. So situation 1. The child has exceeded its usage of some of the resources or all the resources. If the child is going beyond the use of the resources, then the parent process can forcefully finish the child process. This is one chance. Chance 2. The task assigned to the child is no longer required. Very simple, straight away answer. That means the task or the intent, the main intention of the child process is no longer required. Then no need of executing that job. Automatically the parent process will immediately kill the process or terminate the child process. Now go for the option 3 or the third condition or third chance. The parent is exiting. That means the parent is going to terminate. Now what is the use of executing the child process? No need. Even though the child process has some intention, but since there is no parent job which is going to be executed at present, so immediately the parent job along with it, all the child process are going to be terminated forcefully by the parent. So this is the third option. What is the third option? The parent is going to be finished. The parent is going to be completed. Then operating system will not allow the child process without the parent. So automatically the operating system or the parent will kill the child process. So these are the three chances where a child process can be terminated. What is the first chance? If the child process is exceeding its resources beyond its limit. Option 2. If the child process is no longer required. Then option 3. Option 3 means if the parent process is going to be finished, then operating system will not allow the child process to be executing. So the operating system or the parent will kill the child process. Friends, let us try to understand the next concept, that is the inter-process communication. So if you have n number of processes which are being executing, there is always a chance to share the data or to communicate between these processes. So no process is going to be executed as an independent manner. So if you have an environment, and in that environment if you have n number of processes which are being executing parallelly, at any instance, at any stage, these processes may need to communicate in a direct fashion or in an indirect fashion. Now let us try to understand how these processes are going to be communicated. So processes which are executing concurrently, maximum, even though they are independent, at some stage they should cooperate, they should communicate. Now we have to call that environment as the cooperating processes, or that environment is the cooperating environment. If all the processes are executing in independent manner, assume like that, then it is not a cooperating environment. Then there is no need for the communication. But in the real time, it is not like that. If you have more than one process at any stage, at any situation, one process should communicate with other process for any kind of requirement. So such kind of environment is called the cooperating environment. Now let us try to see what are the various reasons for creating this shared environment or cooperating environment. So we have 4 important reasons to establish the shared environment. The first requirement or first reason is the information sharing. So if you are required to share the information, then you should always create a cooperating environment in which one process should share the data to the other process with no excuses. Correct or not? So information sharing is one of the major reason for creating the shared environment or cooperating environment. So what is the second important reason? The second reason is the computation speed up. Since you have n number of processes which are doing their jobs, and if there is a chance that if one process can share its work to other process, assume like that, if there is a chance that if one process is going to share the job, the task of another process, then you have a beautiful improvement in the performance. At the same time, you can also see the speed up in the computation. Correct or not? But in order to share, in order to have a mutual understanding between these processes, then you should create a shared environment. So what is the second reason? To achieve the computation speed up. So what is the first reason? The first reason is the information sharing. Second one is to achieve the computation speed up. And what about the third important reason? Third reason is when you have constructed an environment, and even though you have different processes, but in the real time you have these processes in the form of modules. Correct or not? If you don't have modules, then changing the process or changing in the source code is it is a big task. It's a difficult task. So in order to achieve the modularity, in order to achieve a good possibility for a change in the future, modularity is a principle which has to be employed. Right. Now, why to create this modularity? Because modularity is something like creating an independent environment. At the same time, since all the processes are being running parallelly, at any stage the modularity should reflect with other modules. Therefore, communication should be needed. So this is the third reason. So modularity will automatically creates the communication. And what is the last region? That is the convenience. If you have an environment which is a communicating environment, automatically that will be more convenient for the user application or for the user requirement. So these are the 4 reasons which are very much needed for process cooperation or process communication. What are they? The first one important reason is the information sharing. Second one is to improve the performance or to speed up the computation. Third one is modularity. Fourth one is for the convenience. Now try to look at the picture. You have 2 fundamental models of inter-process communication. You have 2 fundamental models. Mostly all the operating systems follow these 2 fundamental models for the inter-process communication. So what are they? The first model is the accessing the shared memory. The second model is the message passing. So what are the 2 fundamental models for inter-process communication? The first model is the accessing with the shared memory, and the second model is working with the message passing. Let us try to understand these 2 models. See, in the shared memory model, you have a specialized common shared memory. In the main memory, you have a common area, a common shared area in which both process can put their data in that location. You can look at the picture. If you see, you have 2 models. In the model A is the message passing, model B is the shared memory. So first try to understand the shared memory. So we have 2 processes. One is the process A, second one is the process B, right? Now process A wants to communicate with the B. It cannot directly access or it cannot directly communicate with the B. Rather, this model tries to create a shared area in the main memory such that whenever process A wants to share something to the B, it keeps that data item into the shared area. That's it. Now process B goes to the shared location, and whenever it finds any data item in that location, it will fetch that item and it will use it for its execution. This is a simple scenario for the shared memory. Now if you try to understand the next model or the message passing, you have 2 processes the same, process A and process B, right? Now process A is trying to send a message M, call it as M. Process A is trying to send a message M to process B, which is not directly possible because it's a security conflict. Now who has to take the lead? Right, the operating system has to take the lead, or the kernel has to take the lead. Both operating system or kernel, both are same. So process A sends the message to the kernel indicating that please send this message to process B, and the kernel will take that message M and it will forward the same message M to the process B. So this is the second model or second fundamental model, that is called the message passing. So in both the cases, the data has been communicated between different processes. Either you go for the shared memory or you go for the message passing. So different operating systems follow different models, but anyway these are the 2 fundamental models. That's all, friends. Since the time has been crossed, so in the today's session we have learned about the operations regarding to the process creation and operations regarding to the process termination. At the same time, we have also understood the basic 2 models for the process communication. Normally we call it as the inter-process communication, and this inter-process communication is it's a deep concept, or it should be studied in detail. So we'll continue the same inter-process communication in our next session. I hope you have understood today's concept. We'll meet again soon. Have a nice day. Bye.